There's a lot of people that do what they call energy work, which is just
Mm.
running this energy or life force.
Right.
The primary difference is the indigenous doctors, indigenous healers work as conduits. Literally, we have other forces or beings, other entities working through us. And as we work with various individuals, these beings, forces work through us. Some people actually feel the sensations of hands going into the body to do reconstructive work, or they feel some kind of process of surgical reconstruction taking place within the body.
Why is it like some people can do it, not everybody can, while everybody has a similar capacity when it comes to enlightenment?
There's definitely the fact that various individuals, there's a small percentage of individuals that truly have the aptitude to work within this capacity. One thing to take in consideration is that some people are a little too empathic in that they would easily take on the sickness, the imbalances, the
Compassion.
emotions of other individuals.
Ben, first of all, welcome to Zest to Live. I'm so excited to have you today on the show. I was really looking forward to this conversation, and we're going to talk about so many things today. But first of all, how are you?
Oh, good. Just it's morning time here on in the Western Hemisphere. So just getting started with my day. How about yourself?
Mine's like wrapping up. This is the last recording of the day, and I'm excited to do this program and fully prepared with everything.
Mhm.
So, we're going to talk about so many things today, right, Ben? About your journey, about what you do, so the listeners can get to know more about you. But for everybody, I think there is that like a start point in life. People say, okay, it could be the childhood, it could be the puberty, or when you get older. But there is one point in time where that is the aha moment, where like the universe really pulls you into what you're supposed to do, in the sense when you are not supposed to be doing it. Or for some people, they just get into their purpose from the very beginning. How did it start it for you? Did something happen, or was it like just intuitive and you got into it? Like, how did your curiosity, if I have to say, started into spirituality and all of those things that you do today?
Even from early childhood, just being drawn to Native Americans and peoples of other indigenous cultures. And by the time I was 14, hearing about the traditional Native American doctors and the kinds of visionary experiences that they would have, going through these austerities like the sadhus go through in this case. There's some difference, but fasting the 4 days and nights alone in the mountains without food and water. And and they would have this extraordinarily powerful presence coming to them, working within their body and mind, and again having these visionary experiences, often receiving these gifts of healing. And so when I heard about that at the age of 14, I decided right at that moment, if ever given the opportunity, this is what I'll do with my life. And so by the time I was 17, I had taken off on my own. I was living in a community of predominantly Kiowa Indians in the southwestern part of the state, and going into the ceremonies, peyote meetings. And that's where I met my mentor, who is one of the last surviving traditional doctors among the Kiowa tribe. So that's how that began.
And when you met that doctor, like like the traditional medicine doctor, and you say, he's one of the last living doctors, and I think that is true in all sort of sense. If you go to like India, there is Ayurveda. If you go
Mm-hmm.
to China, there's the Chinese medicine, right? And
Yeah,
if you go, and everywhere they had some kind of an ancient medicine. Today, it's
right.
all replaced by the modern medicine, but
Yeah.
can you tell me about this ancient roots of medicine? I mean, the person that that doctor they are belong. I'm trying to understand that philosophy and that sort of medicine. What is that like, and what is exactly that? So you got drawn into it so much.
There's more of a distinction. You find, like in Ayurveda or traditional Chinese medicine, that you have these practitioners that, with Ayurveda, it's more this regimen of, like, I've done panchakarma with the herbs, the herbal preparations, and the massage and the saunas, all these things. And in traditional Chinese medicine, again, with the herbs, with the acupuncture, among Native Americans, the herbal component was secondary. But what they refer to as medicine is that you would have these traditional doctors going through the vision quest, again, the 4 days and nights without food and water. And during that time, they would have these visionary experiences, have these other forces or beings coming to them. And they would carry these kinds of healing gifts or powers, these forces, these beings who work through them to facilitate healing within the bodies and minds of those with whom they worked. And so, in doing this practice, like these beings who'd work through them, going into the body of the patient to do reconstructive work, where there's physical injuries or there's damaged or diseased tissue, and doing reparative work within the body. So they refer to these specific kinds of healing gifts or these powers, they refer to them as medicine. That was their term for it, or at least when it was translated into English, that was the meaning of the word medicine. Again, referring to this kind of power. And the traditional doctors received different kinds of healing gifts or powers. And so they were known for their areas of specialization. Like you had individuals who primarily worked with neurological disorders, others with, say, digestive or respiratory disorders. So one would choose the traditional doctor. They were known for their areas of specialization,
It's
and they
just like
let.
the traditional methods, like like in traditional also, you got a neuropsychologist, and then you got a like a one who
Mm,
does the heart doctor. It's like the area of their expertise. But what I'm trying to understand when you said about those powers, if you go into the Chinese medicine, if you go
yes.
into the Reiki, for example,
Mm,
then they call about the way they do it is taking the energy upwards, and
mm,
and in acupuncture, it's like the points, they hit the point and the
yeah.
energy is taken out. So it's like that, it's really connected to energy. And they use the body and the hands, basically, to facilitate the healing, basically. So is it similar, the one you're talking about, to these methods, or how is it much different than Reiki or the acupuncture, because they have the similar energy method to facilitate the healing?
There's a lot of people that do what they call energy work, which is just
Mm.
running this energy or life force.
Right.
The primary difference is the indigenous doctors, indigenous healers work as conduits. Literally, we have other forces or beings, other entities working through us. And as we work with various individuals, these beings, forces work through us. Some people actually feel the sensations of hands going into the body to do reconstructive work, or they feel some kind of process of surgical reconstruction taking place within the body in areas of specific injuries, or say if someone's suffering from a digestive disorder like Crohn's disease or colitis or IBS, and they could feel that the repair of injuries or damaged or diseased tissue within the body.
But one question that is coming, that is really significant when you talk about
Mm,
it, and I'm asking this from the audience perspective also,
sure.
that where is the science in here? I mean, when you say about external beings, other things, the first question that comes up, that is he talking real? And this is genuine.
Right.
That one person was asking, and I would not stop him too. When you say beings, a lot of question comes into someone's mind. that, is this real, is this a facade? So, I'm trying to
Right.
understand that perspective. How is the science coming in play in this, and is there any science behind this, what you're talking about?
Wow. I'm just thinking a second. So, eh, modern scientific analysis, peer-reviewed studies, all that, that's only come into existence within, say, the past 100 years. I can't give exact dates on it. And yet, these forms of practice have been commonplace among Native Americans and other groups of indigenous peoples for thousands of years. And I don't know specifically how you would verify that through modern scientific methods. For me, it's growing up in my childhood, adolescence, for instance, there was a great deal of trauma that I suffered, physical and emotional trauma. And so there was this openness on my part, the fact that I was suffering, and a willingness to explore and do whatever it took to heal. I began to hear the accounts of these native people. Again, as I said, from the time I was in my adolescence at the age of 14, I tend to be highly skeptical. I don't believe or disbelieve until I can jump in and have the experience. And I encourage other people to do the same thing. I feel a lot of people get themselves into enormous trouble in one way or another because of this willingness to believe without questioning. And so my sense is the way I go about things is I'll jump into different realms of experience. I'll go in and I'll have the experience. I'll see what validity that there is to it. For years, I've also trained with the master from China. Within these systems, what they refer to as the internal martial arts, there's a lot of Qigong practice. And these internal martial arts, they have their roots in Taoism. This is a system that goes back thousands of years. And so there's all this internal practice, internal Qigong practice, where one, through intention, draws this Qi or life force into the body, directs it through certain
I've heard
pathways,
about it.
concentrates it in certain, what they call, what's referred to as subtle anatomy, in this case, the Dantian. And through thousands upon thousands of repetitions, you're building
So it's
your,
like it's like basically, as in the science, what it is, science, it is repeated evidences for a specific cure, so they name it
yes.
as the medicine. And you are saying that, it's also the same with experiences. But, a significant question that would summarize what you are saying for me and for, I think, a lot of people, and it would be simple answer that you can give: is it a truth for you, or is it a belief? That would sum it up for me, Ben, as well.
I would say it's the truth. Again, for me, I need to be able to see results. If I cannot see
You
results,
have
I
seen
can,
results.
yes, for many years, seeing results in training with this master from China, the internal martial arts training, because as I do the practice, I can feel that chi, that presence, that power building. So I would be sparring with the Chinese master, the mentor I train with. And so as I would strike him, and he was shocked because I was doing so much training, I was spending hours of training doing the internal qigong practice, and at one point early on, when I struck him and he felt that jolt, and it physically knocked him backwards, and he was like stunned by it, like the fact that I would develop that quickly. Now,
Right.
as I work with individuals, anytime I work with a person, from the first time and every time thereafter, I scan the body. I hold my hand in front of the body and I feel. deep into the body, and I'm also looking simultaneously. So I'm using two different senses, that kinesthetic feeling sense and also the internal vision. So I'm looking and I am feeling into the body, and I am measuring, I am monitoring the changes. I could feel what's going on with them, the kind of issues they're struggling with, where they're at emotionally, if they're struggling with anxiety, depression. I could feel the changes taking place in their body physiologically.
Isn't
And
that isn't that similar to, when, the what you call it, the Hindus, they do the similar practice, which is called the Kundalini, but the guru
mhm,
does it for you. So
yeah,
it's like they check from the top, from here, that's their pinpoint from the third eye side, and from the downside they
yeah,
transfer, like take up the energy. And only a guru can do it, as per in the, or if you self awaken it, which is extremely harder and riskier, if you don't have a guru in presence to raise a Kundalini.
right.
And is that similar what you said, when you check, because they also do the same to check and transfer the energy upwards with Kundalini?
There is definitely a similarity in terms of capacity. Now,
Right.
and forgive me if my pronunciation is not quite correct, but the gurus, that they possess a certain type of power or transmission. There are whole different kinds of
Hmm.
powers that individuals tap into who have attained mastery within these various traditions. So these gurus have that capacity. They're tapped into that kundalini power, a
Right.
certain very high
Energy,
frequency
frequency.
vibration. Yeah, frequency. What I work with crosses over into that, but there's also much more of a earth based, and it deals a lot more with the physiological, actually going into correct damage within our injury, illness within the physical body, and also working on the emotional level where people have suffered various traumas, facilitating the healing of these traumatic wounds, actually taking the lived experiences, all these highly charged emotions relating to the traumatic
Energies.
events, yeah, taking that, transmuting, transforming that. It is transformed in a way so that it can be digested, assimilated, integrated as fuel for growth. It becomes a functional aspect of the individual as it's transformed. And it's also building a lot of this infrastructure from the Hindu Vedic traditions. They talk about the chakras and these subtle pathways through which the
Right.
Kundalini power flows.
Rises.
Right. And so as I work with people, it's also going in and it's building a lot of this infrastructure, the foundation through which people become more fully embodied, more present, more engaged. They develop the faculties that enable them to develop spiritually, that enable them to develop, to cultivate healthier, more meaningful, more deeply fulfilling relationships, to be
But
more fully engaged in their lives in all contexts. Go ahead.
But why are some people, and this is again a significant question, I feel, why a lot of these people, that, I'm talking about it, the indigenous cultures,
Mm-hmm.
doctors, most of the people, they have this bold claim, not all of them, I'm saying, but
Yes.
most of them claim this one thing, that, these specific people are healers. And this is a common
Mm-hmm.
thing in the United States. Everybody comes and says, this is a healer, or he's a healer, I am a healer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, why is it like some people can do it, not everybody can, while everybody has a similar capacity when it comes to enlightenment? Why is it that some people can do the healing, the others cannot participate, like in the sense, take part in? Is there any such thing like that, or is it, I'm trying to understand that part also. Why is that there's a discrimination? I'm trying to understand that.
There's definitely the fact that various individuals, there's a small percentage of individuals that truly have the aptitude to work within this capacity. One thing to take in consideration is that some people are a little too empathic in that they would easily take on the sickness, the imbalances, the
Compassion.
emotions of other individuals. Not just compassion, just the fact that they
Right.
don't have appropriate boundaries that would enable them to not take on other people's stuff. The other thing too is that there's a way in which the whole new agey type of movement that's occurred has trivialized everything with which it has come into contact. It's like instant enlightenment, instantly become a healer, go through 3 weekend workshops, and now
Right,
you're
right.
a
That
master
those
healer.
things. Those things.
Yeah. In order to become a gifted healer, a traditional native doctor, one goes through years of apprenticeship. Usually, you apprentice with a mentor who takes on one or at the most a few apprentices. He, she transmits all or a portion of their healing gift, and you go through that vision quest, the 4 days and nights, without food and water in order to earn the right to work with these gifts of healing. I started going through the vision quest with my mentor. And then since that time, I have gone for over 30 years. I have been going back to the Wichita Mountains to fast those 4 days and nights without food and water twice a year for 30 years. And most people never even go through that once, but it's, I'm not saying that to impress anyone. I have no need or desire to do so. It's just all these ancient traditions, whether it's the Hindu Vedic tradition within the Taoist lineages, the Sufi traditions, Buddhist, it's one undergoes intensive discipline
Does
on a daily
does the
basis.
Christian doctrine has such practices too? I have heard there is some sort of practices that they had in the Christian mysticism before. Now I think they are not that commonly practiced. I mean, it's really rare. And if they are, they are basically called as witchcraft. Then they are like, okay, this is evil. But before, it used to be part of the Christian mysticism. But as the church grew in power during the king's time, they
Mm,
slowly take took that out. But in the Sufi culture and the Hindu culture, they existed
yeah.
for much longer time because they have been existing for much longer than Christianity is on the planet in terms of the history development. So that's something that I have noticed.
I hear accounts of saints within the
Hmm.
Catholic tradition going way back, but I have no knowledge of any such individuals within the past few centuries. And growing up within the Christian evangelical church, I have never seen or encountered anyone.
The church today and the people are far different from that. It's the
Yeah,
uh, other side that if we don't get into it, that will be better. But let's talk about two significant things. Let's talk about the
sure.
vision quest and the fasting, because I think that is important, and I
Yes,
want to know more about it myself as well. I don't worry about the
mm,
listeners. I'm talking about myself. I want to know about it. Tell
sure.
me about the vision quest and the fasting rituals. What are those like, and what lessons did you learn during that first time when you got through that?
First, going on the vision quest, as I said, it was my mentor would have me fast without the food and water. And then I started going on my own.
Hmm.
And he would have me do that in in order to, as he would be transmitting these healing gifts or powers to me. And then when I started going on my own, I missed some years in my 20s, but when I started going back, and I had this strong pull, inner pull. It's like I need to get back. I need to do this. This is how the traditional native doctors became so extraordinarily powerful. And what I didn't realize or understand going back into it was that it would help to facilitate the healing of the traumatic wounds that I carried from my childhood and adolescence. So there were times I would be on the mountain, and in many respects, it was like a near death experience which I've gone through repeatedly because as this would happen, these portions of my life or these specific experiences, many of which I'd completely forgotten about, and it would be coming back. I would relive these events, these past traumas, and all the vivid sensory impressions, all the emotions, and the thought processes that were taking place in those instances. And it would be extraordinarily powerful. Even if I did remember it, it was much stronger than what I recollected at that time, and I could feel this extraordinarily powerful presence descend into my body, like another presence again descending into my body. I could feel that presence working inside of me. Sometimes the force is so great that physically my body would be thrashing, and it would be extraordinarily difficult to be still because my body's just it's
Shaking.
taking yeah taking shaking and just thrashing about, and it was so intense at times I would feel as though I wanted to just jump out of my skin, and part of me would be fighting or resisting it because it could be excruciatingly uncomfortable at times, but then
Was it painful?
after, not painful like uh, not like it was
Because
just
you said you wanted to jump out of your skin, so that's why I'm asking. Was it painful?
it's this extreme agitation. If you could turn it up past 10 to like 12 or 15 or 20 or something, it's just like the I'm not sure how to convey it in words. It's just this extreme discomfort of being in the body. And the reason it's so uncomfortable is because we go through these experiences and we have this way of numbing or suppressing, pushing emotion down because we don't want to feel it. And we go through much of our life suppressing, denying emotions, our issues, and distracting ourselves and self medicating with food, alcohol, other recreational drugs, cigarettes, pharmaceuticals like antidepressants or anti anxiety meds. And so, going through the vision quest and that power coming into my body, that presence. And so, all that emotion, all those bodily sensations that had to such a degree numbed out, it's all coming back and it's flooding my awareness with this intensity that far stronger than I ever experienced in any other time. And so as that happens, you'll go on for hours, and then there's a lot of vivid graphic imagery and a changing of all kinds of feelings and
And the fasting
sensations.
comes after that? The fasting comes after
During,
that?
during, during. It's fasting without the food and water is what
For
brings
four
me to,
days.
yes, the 4 days and nights. I start feeling this, even, into the second, the third day is night is getting stronger, but definitely the fourth night is the strongest of all. And it's being without the food and water. There's these profound physiological changes taking place in the body, the mind, the brain itself. But also, the Native American elders would talk about how in order to receive these various gifts, healing powers, other forms of power, one needs to be willing to make a sacrifice. And so when we make that sacrifice, they say these forces, other forces or beings say,
What
look,
kind of
yeah,
sacrifice is made, if that's okay to ask?
well, by going without the food and water, we're sacrificing our comfort, that the fact that we're enduring the suffering, and there's the prayer involved, meditation, pleading, asking, have compassion on me to receive these gifts to help other people and to help myself as well. And so this again, these other forces, this presence, these beings. And see, Native Americans not possessing the modern medical interventions or technologies that we rely on today. Nobody did going back 100 or more years ago. But living so close with the forces of nature, they developed this very refined, for lack of a better term, this very intimate level of intimate connection with the forces of nature that few other peoples had developed. I guess if you go in other parts of the world, in some of the more remote areas,
And
Malaysia,
in
Indonesia.
the Hindu tradition, for example, in the Indian
Yeah,
tradition, they talk about a lot of forces, not
yeah,
just one. They talk about that there are multiple layers of forces. Even if you go into Chinese medicine or
yeah,
Chinese old Taoist I'm talking
yeah.
about, they also
Taoist.
talk about multiple energies that are available for facilitating different kind of things. Basically,
Right.
they talk about that. And but what my question is that, you had or did intensive meditation practices, that
Yes.
help awaken a person's innate healing intelligence, what you call, I guess. And
Yes.
I feel certainly everybody has some capacity to heal, not if
Yes.
not if not others, then themselves, definitely, I feel.
Right.
So for that, you need to definitely have that meditation in place, for
Right.
your body and mind. So can you talk and tell me and our listeners about those meditations and how could that help, and tell me a little bit about them.
I developed my own system of meditation practices, and largely because, my mentor transmitted portions of his own healing gifts to me, as I mentioned previously. And that medicine that he transmitted to me, that those powers were laying dormant within me. And when I began to work on my own, it was in many respects like pouring hydrogen peroxide into an infected wound.
Hmm.
Those all that trauma, emotional wounding basically was coming out. It was like boiling out of there. And I found myself consumed by this overwhelming emotional pain and not knowing what to do with it initially. First, I sought out the intervention of a psychotherapist I knew from a local Sufi community. Uh, but psychotherapy only took me so far, giving me the intellectual understanding, but it wasn't healing the trauma. And a lot of that was coming out in relation to, like, I would be forming attachments to women who themselves were deeply wounded. And in many respects, they were reenactments of trauma from my childhood and adolescence. So, as all this overwhelmingly painful, debilitatingly painful emotion was coming out, surfacing, I taught myself instinctively to dive into the depth of it. And I would go so deep into the depths of that pain. And sometimes I'd be breathing into it for hours, but at a certain point, I could feel it breaking open and coming out of my body in waves, and these powerful emanations of warmth beginning to glow from within. As that happened, I found that it was helping me to break up, break apart a lot of
Patterns.
these, patterns. And it was deepening my connection with the higher power. And I feel that all of us have this innate connection with the higher power. So, working with this practice was engaging this deeper innate healing intelligence residing within my own body and mind, connecting me with my own deep, authentic core, our authentic core then being connected to the higher power. Now, in time, I was working through more and more of the emotional wounding. Those debilitatingly painful emotions were becoming less. But what I found is that, like a few years later, I had a relationship end. In this case, she wanted me to move in, start a family, but for some reason I was feeling resistant. Not that I'm commitment averse, there's just at some level, something intuitionally was saying, not the right person to move in, start a family with. I felt all this profound deadness in my chest cavity because I did care deeply. And when she became engaged to someone else, he said, if you have to be friends with your ex, I'll leave you. So late at night, these long drives from Santa Fe back to Albuquerque, I was just breathing into that numbing, that deadening in my chest cavity. First, faint vapors of feeling, then longing, emptiness, loneliness, just a whole torrent of
Like a
feeling flooding
cleansing,
through there.
like a
Yeah,
cleansing. Yeah.
yeah, and then my whole chest cavity aching after some time, some weeks, and then after that, then this flood of just this outpouring. It felt like a connectedness to a higher power, the higher power. And then after some weeks, then going down deep into the middle of my intestines. A lot of people hold an enormous amount of stagnation, congestion. It becomes a
So it was like you
repository.
were cleansing each part of your body, like one by
Yes,
one. You said, like that's what I'm getting from what you said. It's like then you said you got in an instant. So it was full cleansing of each part where the energy is blocked. If I have to say, there the things have been
yes,
blocked.
right, right. Yeah. And there's a
And
whole deep,
yeah, go ahead.
distinct consciousness in different organs or parts of the body. Going into the intestines, there's this whole deeper instinctual consciousness, like our deepest sense of purpose, this deeper instinctual knowing about what we're here to do. This before I was too much in my head, I found by going down into the abdomen, the intestines, I could feel empathically where people were coming from, if they were congruent or not. And by going deep into the abdomen, what I found is that is going much deeper into the core of the emotional wounding. The roots of much of our emotional wounding is situated, it's based deep within the abdomen. It's held in different parts of the body, but I found by going in the abdomen, instead of just staying localized, that where we're accessing the emotions in a localized area, it has the effect of like shaking the whole tree, or if that's
But one thing that I'm asking, with meditation and all of these practices, a lot of these traditions have one thing in common is they
yes,
use some kind of chants or
yeah,
mantras.
yes,
Some people call it chants in the West. In the Indian culture, they call it mantras, but it's a
mm-hmm,
similar thing. So I'm trying to understand, in they say, in Chinese, for example, I'm taking
yes,
example, sometimes they use a sound like a
mm-hmm,
tongue and like a specific kind of sound to facilitate healing and learning as well when you're learning under a guru, right?
right,
And then there is the mantras that also come into play in a lot of these traditions. But let's
true.
not go into the sound, for example. We'll maybe not today, but let's go into the aspect of mantra, because people, when they do meditation, they're picking out one mantra. So tell me about these mantras. What do these mantras do, and how do they basically bring those things which we sometimes, with some people, call supernatural, or some kind of a distinctive bliss that comes in after deep practice of that specific mantra in their meditation?
I'm not as familiar with the use of mantra from the Hindu Vedic tradition. I will say that I have done uh, or have had done for me a number of the yagyas or yagnas,
Right,
depending on what part of India you're from. And my favorite is the Mahachandi yagya, which is for the goddess Durga
right.
and is extraordinarily powerful. I highly recommend it if you have the
So
opportunity to.
high energy, like
Yes,
you're intense.
intense. Yes, definitely. I would be staying at a friend's house and he
Hmm.
could feel that power and he would walk outside and barefoot just to ground when I would be having the Mahachanti done. But Native Americans didn't have mantras in the way that you find in the Hindu Vedic tradition. There were chants, specific chants, and some of them did have extraordinary extraordinary power associated with them, chants and songs. That I did not learn. That was not part of the teaching that was passed on to me. And a lot of it would have to do with uh, what tribe because there's a lot of variation from
Right.
one tribe to another in the spiritual practices. And also your mentor, because my mentor possessed specific kinds of gifts or healing powers, and he transmitted to me
What
based
he had
upon
that only he can give. That's right. Now, like what he had that only.
exactly. Yes, that wasn't, he had specific songs that he would do in the peyote meetings, but that was for that purpose during the peyote meetings, but he didn't utilize those outside of the peyote meetings.
And as we are soon going to wrap up the conversation, two things that we'd like to ask. First is like the mantra that the mention. I would like to add a small thing to it.
Yes,
So there is a really old book in the Hindu tradition. It's called the Narad Pancharatra.
yes,
So it's a very old book, and in that book, it's asked like Narad Muni, which is one of the persons in like an angel kind of a person in the Hindu tradition. He
yes,
asked Shiva that how do these mantras work, why do
yes,
they help people, or these chants, how do they actually come into play? And I think he gave I don't know if he really said it, that's in the book again, so I don't know if he
yes.
ever really said it, but again, if we go by the words, it's really significant. Not a normal person can say it, definitely somebody who has done some practice can only say it. He said,
Mhm,
he gave a great example. He said, imagine, you are walking down the road, right?
mhm.
And somebody calls your name, hey Ben,
Yes,
hey Ben, and keep calling it. You have to look back and see who is calling you from behind. That is the
yes,
same thing with mantra. When you do the chanting, when you do the mantra who's walking in the universe has to look back down to who is asking for it, and has to
mhm,
go and check, what is his intention, what he wants to do with me, that energy. And it's the same with the energy, he said. It's the same. You're trying to call about it, and it is trying to bring it in. And I think that's a great example. I feel. What do you think?
that sounds valid to me. I mean, just
But my next question is really okay. I'll let you sum it if you want to add something.
no, go ahead. Hmm.
So, next question that, one of our final questions is, we discussed this on the pre call about your journey to Sri Lanka. And I think
Yeah.
it would be injustice to not talk about that thing in here, I feel, for this conversation. So tell me about the Sri Lanka journey. How did that begin, and what transformations did you experience, and things that you saw there? I mean, it's such a different culture than you're seen in the West, I'm sure.
It was very difficult for me to leave the Native American communities. And here I trained with this traditional Native doctor, and there was a degenerative element, and much of that related to alcohol consumption, and part of that, indigenous peoples not having alcohol within being exposed to it like people of European descent for thousands of years, and so a higher incident of addiction. Although, too, there's also even a higher percentage of Native Americans who completely abstain from alcohol. But the communities that I was living in, things were getting pretty rough there. And so, being disillusioned, I bailed out. And also, there's the being subjected to such severe trauma over multiple generations contributes to that tendency to self medicate. Now, I will say, other Native Indigenous communities, there are a lot of people that are very highly intelligent and productive. But on the reservation where I was living, or a Native community in Oklahoma as well, it was pretty rough there. And so finding myself back in the mainstream, what I call Wonder Bread culture, white American culture, I had a lot of difficulty connecting. People couldn't understand or fathom a lot of the experiences I had. It was difficult dating. It's like some of the I don't know, I'll just say white women just like didn't quite know what to do with me. And And there was this whole instinctual thing. I had all these frequent flyer miles. It's like, get on a plane and go to Sri Lanka. So I did. I also ventured up to India about 6 times as well. And so I'd be over there, and I had this much deeper resonance with Indians and Sri Lankans, and just found it much easier to connect. I could relate to and understand South Asians much better than I could, say, a lot of the white folks, and they could relate to and understand me better. And and there was this mutual attraction. When it came to forming romantic attachments as well, and there's this whole fascination with the Hindu Vedic traditions. I mean, staying in Delhi, one of the priests took a lot of interest in me when they were conducting the festivals, and doing the Vedic chanting, and I was feeling it in my body with this intensity, and that's part of what drew me into getting the yagyas done for me. And then being in Sri Lanka, and you have this ancient practices, the Kapu Mahata, which even precedes the Sinhalese culture. I think it's older indigenous practices, and
Yeah, they have really old tribes there in Sri Lanka,
the
old cultures.
Vedas, the
Yeah,
Vedas, yeah.
I don't know about them, but I know that they are really old cultures that exist in Sri Lanka. That I know about.
Yeah, and then staying in the south, predominantly Sinhalese South, but then after the war ended, going and staying in the north of the country, and getting to be friends with quite a few former LTTE, former cadres, former Tamil Tigers. I was developing connections with a lot of these individuals, and they were the Tigers were branded as terrorists, but as I got to know these people, I realized that, hey, the Sri Lankan government, military, sadly, they were sexually assaulting women, they were murdering people, they were dropping
The
bombs on.
government,
Yeah,
the
the
government.
government, they bombed a girls' school, they killed 60 schoolgirls, they bombed Tamil churches, and horrific abuses these people were being subjected to. And I came to understand that. And speaking with these individuals, you talk with them, they never wanted to go to war. They never wanted to fight. They just wanted, like anyone else, to raise
Peace.
their families, peace, to put their children through school, to build their businesses, to better
Just like a
themselves.
regular life that everybody wants to live
Yeah,
around the world.
and Tamil people are very industrious, very intelligent people. I
Right.
resonate deeply with them as a people, as a culture, and just I feel a very strong connection. I would participate in the festivals, where you have the deity on the platform and you have the beams and you're carrying the deity around the Kovil, which if you're from a different part of India or a different culture altogether,
You know,
Kovil is a
one thing
temple.
that I would like to definitely add, if someone is Native American,
Yeah,
and he has, I mean, just not Native American, he is living the tradition. He
yeah,
would really enjoy the Indian culture and the Sri Lankan culture because,
yes,
these cultures have that rituals from their cultures still protected and in play today. Even if you go to any Asian old countries like Thailand, they all have these rituals and cultures to relive those experiences. But if you go in the West, everything is lost into
yeah,
the modernity, and that's something, when you see it's mundane, it slowly becomes like that
yeah,
because there's no rituals, no participation of communities. It's all just, a facade and play and alcohol, as you said. So those
yeah,
things, like the lifestyle, which I've said you on the pre-call to, it's like a lifestyle thing rather
yeah.
than a culture anymore.
And there's not those forces, those ancestral forces,
Right,
those
right,
beings, those
right,
powers
right.
that are so much apart, whether you're in China, and those Taoist traditions in India, the Hindu Vedic traditions, the more ancient among the Adivasi, among the Vedas in Sri Lanka, and just even among the Sufis, and all these ancient and indigenous cultures. There are these ancestral beings, these forces, and it was just so much a part of the culture, the fabric of reality, and it's just missing. It's like in America we have this white bread. You know, there's these brands, like there's one called Wonder Bread, and it's like it has so devoid of nutrition. They put in a few vitamins, but it's
Refined
just
flour, refined flour.
everything's artificial. And there's a
Right.
way in which, in our modern day world and all the technology, and there's this. It's like people are these rootless cosmopolitans, is a way to frame it.
You
So,
know, if you go into the West and you go to the supermarkets in the West, like the
yeah.
Walmart or any
Hmm.
kind of big supermarket, there's this thing that the meats they sell is like a weeks or months old, and
Yeah.
if you go to any Asian country and give them that kind of a meat, they would immediately throw it away, saying, this is like trash dog food, because if for them meat is always supposedly has to be fresh. If it's
Right.
not fresh, they were not going to eat it. If you go to any part of India, if you go to any
Hmm.
part of the China or Thailand, they want the meat to be cut live and fresh. They take it
Yes.
home, they cook it, eat it, finish the same day. They don't even keep it of one day. But if you go in the West and somebody comes from the West, they're going to see this is all happening, and they say, what do you eat? They give the meat packet, which is like, okay, having the preservative, 6 months old, branding, and that's what they eat. And just imagine, Troy, sorry, not Troy, sorry, Ben. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Mac, not forgot the name, because I had that yesterday recording with some different name. But
Yeah.
if you look at in Indian culture, or if you go to the West, the milk is homogenized in the West.
Hmm.
That is a 6 months old, and the real milk cannot be kept more than 2 days longer. And
Right.
how can they keep it 6 days longer? So you see, this is the difference. The food is really different. So as we are wrapping this conversation up, I would just like to finish one thing into this, is that the debate between the science and spirituality. I would like to add a Vedanta verse to it before we wrap this up.
Sure.
So in science, there's two beliefs that
Yeah.
if something is not known, it will be known.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's not known today, it will be known. That's the two belief principle of science. That if it's known, then if it's not known, then it will be known. These are the two principles that make science possible. If you go into Vedanta, if you go into any spiritual culture that has existed and has some sense, they would talk about the third one. They also have the two beliefs that if something is not known today, it will be known tomorrow. They have these two beliefs similar to science, but the
Hmm.
third belief is only present in spirituality. And the Vedantic tradition also, they talk about it. That's where I heard it first of all. Is they say that something that is never known and that will never will be known, it is always going to remain behind the veil. Behind, it's going to remain a mystery, and that's what makes the third part of spirituality. When we
Hmm.
go into that search, that is the mysticism that we search for, that mystery. That is, I mean, just imagine, Ben, when we have that blissful experiences, when we have those things we call, okay, supernatural, where is
Hmm.
that coming from? It is definitely coming from something that is within us, that power that is holding us all together. We call it the higher power, people call it the higher
Right.
power, but it's definitely something inside us that is powering us even at this moment when we are talking, right? To have those processes going. I like the word when you use that, processes, because so many
Hmm.
functions in the body, and I think the human body is one of the most mysterious things that is out there. Just look at how many functions we have. It's unimaginable. Would you like to add something?
Right. Right. Exactly. Highly complex. And I feel we're just beginning to tap into this, but there's a lot of it that I feel cannot be fully measured
Understood.
through the limited means that we have as of yet, if ever, for that matter.
So tell me about this. What are you doing at the moment while we are talking? And people who are wanting to connect with you in some sort of way, what are things you're going to providing these days for the people who are seeking help, or who are seeking improving or healing their life in some sort of way from traumas and all those different things?
There's a number of things. I teach this whole system of meditation practices. No matter where you are in the world, you can reach out to me. You can find my contact information on my website, benufana.com, BENOOFANA, so benufana.com. So do reach out to me. You can find me through Facebook. You can message me through Facebook. And on Instagram, I have a YouTube channel. You could find me there. But I can teach these meditation practices. The main part of the work I do, I learned from the traditional Native American doctor. I act as a conduit, allowing this extraordinarily powerful presence to work through me. When I work with people in person, we do the meditation, but then the work we do on the table, this again, extraordinarily powerful presence works through me, facilitates a regenerative process within the body, working with people with digestive, respiratory disorders, heart disease, stroke, traumatic brain injuries, uh,
So many
suffered
things.
a wide range of physical, emotional, childhood sexual trauma, trauma related to combat
And this
experience,
can happen virtually,
wartime.
as you're saying. This can happen even virtually.
I can teach the practices, the meditations virtually. The most powerful part of the work is done in person. So reach out to me. I'll let you know what can be done. We can do a big part of it remotely from anywhere in the world, but the most powerful part is done one on one in
And you're admitting
person.
that it has to be in person. You're not like, okay,
Yes,
some of those other people who try to sell, oh, it can be done anywhere. You are admitting
yes,
that it has to be done in person to facilitate the complete package, if I have to say, to do that.
correct. Yes, I just want to be truthful, honest, straightforward, and just tell you what's going to get the best results. But I make the pilgrimage twice a year to go back to the Vision Quest. I go to a great deal of expense, fly down to Oklahoma, reserve the Airbnb and the rental car, and there's the flights, all that. And I go to the expense. I put myself in the mountain for those days. I take off the time of work. And in the Hindu Vedic tradition, for instance, people would make these pilgrimages to go to sacred sites. So
Right.
even when it comes to healing, one needs to be willing to travel sometimes a great distance to get the intervention, the assistance they need. And sometimes people say, hey, you want to come to where I'm at? I will buy the plane ticket and I'll put you up. You know? And so I've done that for people as well. But yeah, go to my website again, benufana.com. Definitely reach out to me if I could be of assistance.
And what do you want to, if I have to say to people, are you giving yourself to the people? What is that? Why are you doing it? I'm asking. I mean, that's the question. What is the reason of your doing it every day when what you do it? I mean, apart, I don't think you're doing it for money that I can get from you, but what is the simple reason you are doing it for the people who are needing? Is it just compassion and your innate ability that you have to so you can do it, or is there any other reason that you help people who are suffering inherently?
It pains me to see people suffering. And from that place of compassion, the spirit of the bodhisattva, desire to do whatever I can do to better facilitate and bettering people's lives, whatever I can do within my capacity to improve the lives of people and also animals. I feel tremendous care, concern for the well being of animals as well, and encourage others to be compassionate, whether it's caring for a child, even if that child is not your own, or caring for the street dogs. There's a lot of street dogs in India and Sri Lanka. It doesn't take that much of you to put out some food for the doggies or to take one into your home.
Lastly, what advice would you give to the listeners who are seeking to embark on the journey of self discovery and healing as we talk and as we end this conversation?
Do practice every day meditation. One of the most powerful practices is the meditation I developed. Acknowledge what's happening in your life. What do you feel in response to it? What feelings, what physical sensations? Where are these feelings residing within your body? Center your awareness in those emotions. Breathe very softly, very deeply. Follow the feelings and sensations. And taking it as this is your own internal universe. Your body, your mind is a doorway to vast internal universes.
Cosmos.
Yes, yes. It's through your body and mind that you find this doorway to the higher power and to these vast internal universes. So I'll leave you with that.
So thank you so much, Ben, for being on Zest to Live today. I was so happy to have you today on the show. And I think we did discuss a lot about the indigenous cultures
Yeah,
and also about those other healing modalities. And I still feel, to be honest, that a lot of these things are not for everybody. I mean,
right.
in the sense,
True.
some people, everybody has their own ways of going on their own path. So
Yeah,
if you feel this is the path, Ben is available to be reach out to, and he's
yes,
one person to definitely reach out to be part of it. But it's not something that if you feel hesitant, if you feel this is not for me, you don't have to think about it
right,
twice. I mean, you have the choice to make, and that's what I like about Ben, and the reason I have this conversation, because he's not those kind of people who's adamant on one thing. He says, this is what I have taken, this is what I have, and I can give. But if you think, okay, something else is going to work for you, go and do that. And that's what I like about when we talked, like I talked with Ben. He has the openness to everything, which is not in a lot of people who I have talked to with this culture. They are a little conservative, I have to be honest, Ben. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them,
right.
that this is how it should be, this is how it should be. I mean, you are open to everything, which is great. So thank you so much for being today on the Zest to Live podcast. I was so happy to have you today on the show, Ben.
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. I very much enjoy engaging with you today.
It's Mithilesh, it's not Sanjeev, it's Mithilesh.
Oh, Mithilesh, on your,
Yeah, I
what
know
I,
it's different on the podcast. I think
Mithilesh,
something, it's Mithilesh. Thank you so
Mithilesh.
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very much enjoy.
Welcome to Luvo. This is your home screen, giving you access to all features like steps counter, water intake, mood check, heart rate, sleep, and gratitude. You can also monitor your steps, heart rate, and sleep by connecting the app with your smartwatch. Experience live meditation, yoga, and healthy eating, all of which is coming soon. Download our free app and start living your best life.